Okay, hi everyone. It is now the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our latest Converge webinar. My name is Lori Peak, and I am the principal investigator for the National Science Foundation funded Converge facility, which is headquartered at the Natural Hazard Center at the University of Colorado Boulder. CONVERGE is dedicated to connecting researchers across disciplines to advance ethical, interdisciplinary, convergence-oriented research that is problem-focused and solutions-based. On behalf of our entire team, it is our pleasure to welcome you to the CONVERGE webinar series. Today, during this brief 30-minute demonstration webinar, we are going to share the latest CONVERGE training module, which focuses on positionality in hazards and disaster research and practice. We are so excited to share this new module with you and to introduce you to some of our new partners to the north. And we are grateful that you have all joined with us today. A few logistical items before proceeding any further. Please note that this webinar is being recorded, and the captioned recording and slides will be posted on the CONVERGE website at converge.colorado.edu. Should you have any questions or comments during the webinar, please use the Q&A box or the chat box. If we're unable to respond during this brief webinar, we will post written responses on the CONVERGE webinar webpage or follow up with you directly after the session. One of the major tasks of the CONVERGE project is to accelerate the education and training of a diverse next generation of hazards and disaster researchers and practitioners. We recognize that disaster research is often highly event-driven. In order for the field to progress, it is crucial that those new to this area of study have access to already existing research and an understanding of various methodological approaches and potential ethical challenges that come with conducting disaster research. To help, our CONVERGE research team has created a series of free online training modules that are specifically designed for students, emerging researchers and practitioners, and others who are new to the field who hope to quickly background themselves on key information that is vital to the study of hazards and disasters. Thus far, we have released 11 training modules, which are available on the CONVERGE website. These modules focus on a variety of foundational as well as advanced topics relevant to our research community, such as IRB procedures, conducting emotionally challenging research, cultural competence, broader ethical considerations, and collecting perishable data, among several other topics. These modules focus on multiple hazard types, natural, technological, and willful human violence, and they draw on lessons from multiple disciplines in the social sciences, engineering, natural sciences, and beyond. What ties all the modules together, regardless of the topical focus, are our shared themes concerned with inequality, power differentials, interdisciplinarity and convergence research, methods and ethics, data management, and practical applications of research. These training modules can be used as a classroom assignment or competency requirement to ensure that students and others who are new to the field have a baseline level of knowledge and skills as they move forward with their efforts. To further encourage classroom adoption, we have partnered with educators to create the CONVERGE Training Modules Assignment Bank. There, you can find several model assignments posted on the CONVERGE training module page for classes at both the undergraduate as well as graduate levels. So to all the educators out there who may be using these training modules in your courses, we would welcome your contribution to the assignment bank. So please reach out to us at converge@colorado.edu if you have an assignment you would like to share and to have published on the CONVERGE website. The training module that you are going to hear about today was made possible through the vision and leadership of Dr. Christine Gibb, who you are going to meet very shortly. Chris actually had her students at the University of Ottawa in her humanitarian action course complete a project where they first went through and completed some of the CONVERGE training modules that were already available on our website. And then Chris invited her students to try their own hand at writing their own training module. 5 of her students in her class did such an extraordinary job on the project that Chris and I began corresponding back and forth about the assignment and the possibility of us working together and collaborating with Rachel and Candace here at the Natural Hazard Center to turn the class project into a module. It's the module that you will hear about today. And so Candace and Rachel, who you will also meet, did a beautiful job of partnering with Chris and her brilliant students to take the draft material that was provided and to turn it into a CONVERGE training module. And so this was actually our first collaboration of this support, where a CONVERGE module actually grew out of a classroom assignment and the work of a group of very talented undergraduate students. And so with that, Chris, I am so excited to turn the reins over to you and your students. I'm going to go on mute. We'll continue to drive the slides. And Chris, a warm welcome to you and looking forward to learning from you as always.
Thank you very much for that warm introduction. As Lori mentioned, I'm an assistant professor in the School of International Development and Global Studies at the University of Ottawa. One of the undergraduate courses that I teach is called Humanitarian Action. And for many students, it's their first introduction to studying disasters and hazards. I first created and taught the course online in winter of 2021. The course is split into 2 major sections. One is on disasters and hazards. The other is on humanitarian conflicts. So there's a lot of overlap. I designed the course so that the students can really get exposed to the world of humanitarian workers. So there are a lot of assignments, and they were geared towards getting the students to think and to communicate like these practitioners. Given this focus, and as Lori mentioned, one of the assignments I had students complete was called Create a Training Module, where in groups of 3 to 5, they actually got to develop their own training module on a topic that they thought could help better prepare humanitarian workers who work in disaster and or conflict settings. One of the student groups, 2 members of which I'm very happy to have here today, developed a module on the topic of positionality in humanitarian sections, in humanitarian settings, that we ended up sharing with the CONVERGE team.
Thank you. So hi, everyone. My name is Bella Runza, and I graduated with honors in the International Development and Globalization School at the University of Ottawa in 2021. As Professor Gibb mentioned, I was one of the students who developed the original training on which this CONVERGE training module is based. Although it seems like forever ago, being able to work on a project that I care about during the first experience of online learning was truly rewarding. We were able to make I was able to work with a fantastic group who had the same motivations as me while developing the material. During a time of such uncertainty, the lockdowns, various social justice movements, natural disasters, and war, positionality is a core element in supporting other communities through struggle. This module will be able to educate folks on the priorities while supporting others in some of the scariest moments of their lives, and just focusing on what will really help to make a difference.
Hi all, my name is Molly McEwen, and I'm one of the other students who developed the original material upon which this module is based before I graduated from the International Development and Globalization School at the University of Ottawa in 2022.
So now we're going to transition over to Rachel and Candace, who serve as the co-lead developers of the CONVERGE training module series. As Lori noted, they took the content developed by the students and put that into their CONVERGE format, including reviewing additional literature and developing a number of the case studies that appear in the module. Candace, over to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. As Chris mentioned, my name is Candace Evans, and I'm a doctoral candidate in sociology at the University of Colorado Boulder and a graduate research assistant here at the Natural Hazards Center and for the CONVERGE initiative. Today, I'm going to provide a bit of an overview of the positionality training module, and I'd like to start first by providing a broad definition of the term positionality. Anthropologists and feminist scholars were among the first to introduce and carefully consider the concept of positionality. Researchers writing in this vein emphasized how one's social, historical, and political positions influence the content of and manner in which knowledge is acquired, interpreted, and shared. Over time, discussions of positionality have evolved to more broadly consider the ways in which one's social characteristics, roles, and statuses shape both how we understand ourselves and, subsequently, are perceived and understood by others. Throughout this module, we use the term positionality to refer to our multiple intersecting identities and how social roles, power, and privilege influence our perceptions and experiences in research and practice. With that definition in mind, I'm now going to provide an overview of the Positionality and Hazards and Disaster Research and Practice training module. What you can see right now is that the positionality module is organized into 4 lessons. Lesson 1 focuses on defining and understanding the concept of positionality. Lesson 2 discusses positionality within hazards and disaster research and practice. Lesson 3 provides examples of tools and activities for considering positionality. And Lesson 4 reviews strategies and opportunities for considering positionality in research and practice. Overall, this module takes about 30 to 60 minutes to complete. Each of these lessons focuses on different topics and a specific set of learning objectives. For example, by the end of this module, participants should be able to define positionality, define intersectionality and explains how it relates to positionality, understand how self-reflection and reflexivity can help researchers and practitioners think about the power of their positionality, explain how and why positionality matters for those working in hazards and disaster contexts, understand how reflecting on positionality can improve disaster research and practice, access specific tools and activities that researchers and practitioners can use to explore their positionality in relation to their work, recognize the importance of understanding how one's diverse identities influence hazards and disaster work, review strategies for thinking about positionality in hazards and disaster research and practice, and identify individual and institutional opportunities to strengthen and support discussions of positionality across disciplines in hazards and disaster research and practice. In the online module on the right-hand side of the page, there's a tracking bar where you can monitor your progress as you move through the module lessons and topics. Once you have completed a topic, you can always go back and review at a later time. Throughout the module, we provide case studies from multiple locations and hazard types, examples, images, and infographics to illustrate content. In the Insider-Outsider Perspective lesson, we discuss the Insider-Outsider perspective on positionality and research. Traditional conceptualizations of positionality in research often focus on distinguishing between being an insider, or a researcher who identifies and is identified as part of the community or group being studied, or an outsider, or one who does not share key status characteristics with the respondents, or who lives and works outside of the community of study. Such considerations are important because, as Kimbrough writes, being an insider can offer both visible and invisible tools that researchers can draw upon, ultimately helping them to cultivate trust and mutual respect. Yet, researchers also have written about how positionality and insider and outsider status can be complicated and dynamic, given the fluidity of one's positionality across different contexts and interactions. To illustrate this, we present a case study of a Ghanaian researcher who, after leaving to pursue his graduate studies in the United Kingdom, returned to his Ghana home to conduct fieldwork. In reflecting on his experiences, he described feeling like both an insider and outsider in the field. This is one of many concrete examples in the module that demonstrate how positionality influences both the experience and process of disaster research and practice. In addition to the module's written and interactive visual content, we have compiled a wealth of additional resources related to positionality in research and practice, including an annotated bibliography. By clicking the Additional Resources tab at the top right-hand corner of the screen, you can find links to toolkits, activities, trainings, and other relevant resources for considering and understanding your positionality. Importantly, you must be logged into the module to access these resources. At the end of the module, you can take a 10-question quiz to assess what you have learned. If you're an instructor considering these quizzes for classroom use, we have a question bank that uses a random generator. So if you assign this to your students, they will not all get the same questions. If you get at least 8 out of 10 questions correct, you will receive a certificate of completion with your name and the date. You can save this certificate as a PDF and can also access it at a later date through your training module account. In addition, thanks to a partnership with the International Association of Emergency Managers, or IAEM, we offer 1 contact hour of general management training for each completed CONVERGE training module through the IAEM certification program. As shown on your screen, the contact hour is placed on the certificate upon completion of each module. We are now going to turn this over to Rachel Adams, who will be leading the demonstration portion of this webinar. While Lori is getting the screen ready for demonstration, Katie will add a link to register for the training modules in the chat. Rachel, over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Adams, and I'm a research associate at the Natural Hazard Center and one of the co-lead developers of the CONVERGE training module series. So I'm now going to walk you through a demonstration of the positionality training module. The module covers a number of important topics related to positionality in hazards and disaster research and practice. For the sake of time, I'm going to guide you through lesson 2, as well as an activity we included at the end of lesson 3 to demonstrate how you might incorporate this module into your teaching or classroom assignments. Lesson 2 expands upon why and how positionality matters for hazards and disaster researchers and practitioners, and highlights how understanding the complex dynamics between oneself and others in a variety of social contexts is an important part of working in hazardous environments and disaster settings. So the first topic in this lesson is positionality in hazards and disaster contexts. Recognizing and understanding your positionality is critical to ensure that your work does not unintentionally contribute to existing power imbalances. Savin, Baden, and Major identify 3 primary ways that a researcher may begin to reflect on their positionality through considering their personal positions, external perceptions, and professional status. Engaging in these 3 steps can help sharpen considerations of positionality among individual researchers. But considering positionality does not have to be strictly an individual process. In fact, such considerations can even be more fruitful when done as part of a group with a shared sense of trust and commitment to ethical work. For example, members of a multidisciplinary team of disaster researchers or humanitarian aid workers might find it useful to reflect on their positionality individually and then share these insights with the rest of the team. In doing so, researchers and practitioners can help expand reflections on their positionality while also contributing to a broader culture of ethical, reflexive disaster work. The next topic in this lesson discusses challenges associated with assessing positionality in hazards and disaster contexts. Given the rapidly unfolded nature of disasters, researchers and practitioners may be propelled into unfamiliar cross-cultural contexts where they lack appropriate knowledge concerning the cultural, social, political, and economic dynamics of the local community. Yet understanding these dynamics is key to socially situating oneself and to doing culturally competent work. An important task working in cross-cultural contexts is to understand the complex histories and global structures and systems that have created unequal relationships between different countries and people. In turn, researchers and practitioners should interrogate how these dynamics have shaped their own personal worldviews, opinions, and perspectives. Developing a sense of cultural awareness in relationship to one's positionality represents a foundational first step to building cultural competence and doing more effective research. So rather than continuing to show you this lesson, which follows a similar format, we wanted to take this opportunity to show you the 3rd lesson of this module, which invites you to put your knowledge into action by providing an opportunity for users to consider and understand their own positionality. Our hope is that by demonstrating this portion of the module today, you will walk away with ideas of how you might incorporate these activities and the module itself into your classrooms. So this lesson begins with a short vignette about climate change in low-income countries. After reading the vignette, users have the opportunity to reflect on how their positionality might shape their responses to the vignette case. So here's just a little information about what's being presented. So ample evidence suggests that the frequency and severity of disasters will only continue to rise as a result of human-induced climate change, rising inequality, and political inaction. In the last 30 years, the number of climate-related disasters has tripled, with especially devastating effects on those in low-income countries such as Fiji and Micronesia, which experience more disasters per year than any other location in the world. Indeed, it is estimated that by 2030, low-income countries will spend between 140 and 300 billion per year adapting to and coping with damages of climate-related disasters that are linked to the greenhouse gas emissions that come mostly from the United States, Europe, and China. Yet even in these low-income nations, the effects of disasters are not equally distributed. Women, for instance, are especially vulnerable due to gender inequalities in economic resources and employment, lack of access to key disaster information and early warnings, and high levels of sexual and gender-based violence. Moreover, the challenges faced by women in low-income countries are often overlooked by humanitarian organizations and disaster prevention and response programs. For example, according to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, only 1% of humanitarian aid organizations have an explicit goal to reduce gender inequalities in disaster response programs or projects. So after reading this vignette, users are then asked to imagine that they are a researcher or a humanitarian aid worker preparing to deploy to a low-income island nation recently devastated by flooding. They would then type their answer into the response box here and then press finish assessment to move on to the next page. Note that while we do not grade these responses via CONVERGE, this can serve as an excellent assignment for your classrooms or a discussion starter in the context of the classroom. For example, we've heard from some faculty members who use our module in their class, have students complete the module for their certificate, and then have them bring in their responses to questions like this to help with the classroom conversation. We hope you might share with us how you use activities like this in your own education or teaching. Finally, I wanted to point out one more thing during this demonstration. As discussed earlier, the module has a resources tab where additional resources are listed that can support researchers in considering their positionality. These resources include toolkits, group-based activities, and other relevant resources. Each of these resources is also hyperlinked. So for example, if I press the Perform Toolkit for Researchers link, it'll bring me to a web page for this resource, as you can see here. I also wanted to note that we have an annotated bibliography that includes all the references cited in the module. And you can find the bibliography in the Learning Management System, but it is also available for download on the CONVERGE website as well. So this concludes our demonstration for today. We're now going to return to the webinar slides. We hope that this webinar has been helpful to you today, and I'm now going to turn this back over to Lori for some concluding comments. Lori, over to you.
Rachel, thank you so much for that, and Candace for the overview of the module, and Rachel for the demonstration. As you noted, I'm going to go ahead and get the slides back up right now. And before we close out today, I did want to share a few brief announcements, and then we will probably have a couple of minutes left if anyone has any questions or comments on the module. And so Rachel, Candace, and I are always excited to share with you with what's coming up next with this series. And so as we noted at the outset, this positionality module is our 11th in the CONVERGE training module series. And we have launched a new collaboration with the Rising Voices initiative, which includes Indigenous scholars from many different regions. And we are now collaborating on our 12th module in this series, which will focus on the topic of Indigenous sovereignty in hazards and disaster research. And we will be hosting a brief demonstration webinar sometime probably later this summer once that module is complete and we are ready to roll it out to the community. So please do stay tuned. And in the interim, we hope that you might go back and complete some of the other resources that are already available on the website if you haven't already. On behalf of our training modules team, we also wanted to give our viewers a quick update regarding where we stand with completions of the module and registrations. And so to date, 7,487 people, including students, academics, government officials, private sector professionals, and many others, have registered for these training modules. And thus far, the first released in the series, our Social Vulnerability and Disasters module, which was completed with the support of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as well as the National Science Foundation, still remains our most completed module in the series, with over 3,000 completions of that module to date. Over 1,700 people have completed the disaster mental health module, and over 1,300 have completed the cultural competence module, which we see our longtime friend and colleague, Haorui Wu, is on the webinar today, who actually led the cultural competence module. So as always, Rachel and Candace and I send thanks and greetings to you, Haorui. 972 have completed the broader ethical considerations module, and you can see many other hundreds of completions of the other modules in the series. And as always, Rachel and Candace have been leading some evaluation efforts to track the knowledge impacts of these modules, as well as the skills attainments that students and others have been gaining from completing these modules. As far as accessing the CONVERGE training modules, again, we hope you will go to our converge.colorado.edu website to log on, to register if you haven't already, and to complete those free resources. You also can sign up for updates at the Hazard Center website, as well as at the CONVERGE website. And as always, on behalf of our entire team, we wanted to send a special thanks out from Boulder, Colorado to the National Science Foundation, as well as to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the U.S. Geological Survey for the support that has made the generation of these modules possible. And so with that, I see that we now have 3 minutes remaining. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now, and I'm going to move over and look in the Q&A box and also in the chat box to see if there are any comments or questions to be shared in these remaining moments. And so starting with the Q&A box, Elizabeth Davis just saying thanks for the collaboration and great work. And Elizabeth being one of the nation's leaders in access and functional needs. Thank you, Elizabeth, for all that you do. And please know that we have been very inspired by your work and have really tried to bring the kind of intersectional lens to these modules that you have been promoting for so long. So thank you, Elizabeth, for that comment. And now I'm going to move over to the chat box, and just thanks again to those who are joining from across the US and around the world. And I see that Haorui has typed a comment in the chat, so I'm going to share this now from him. And so Haorui said, thank you for developing this module. Positionality is critical in hazards and disaster research, as well as all the social sciences and other related disciplines. Hence, in most research outcomes, such as journal articles and reports, researchers should clearly indicate their positionalities, such as their gender, sexual orientations, ethnicities, and how these positionalities have affected the conduct of their research. However, often this positionality information is private, and the researchers may not have the right or feel comfortable to release this information. Journals may not encourage this. And so Haorui ends this great comment with a great question, which is, how would you suggest dealing with this conflict of sort of the methodological need to share about your positionality, but also the challenges with sometimes it may not be safe or welcome in terms of the environments to share it. So Chris, Rachel, Candace, Bella, Molly, do any of our lead developers have any comments on Haorui's great question in our minute remaining?
Sure. Thank you so much for that comment and question, Haorui. Yeah, sometimes there can be this conflict, which is unfortunate, because really we want to create a culture that is open to wanting to share and people to reflect upon their positionality and set examples in their research products like journal articles and grant applications. Yeah, it's not something I have necessarily an answer for right in this moment, but just even considering the fact that some of these positions in society may not be, public information can be quite challenging. So thank you for that. And I do see that Chris has her hand raised. So why don't you go ahead, Chris?
Sure, I think that's a great question. And at the end of the module, there are recommendations about having discussions with your research team or your practitioner team. So this is the exact kind of question that we're hoping that you would have to think about what are the implications of talking about positionality beyond our work. So is it appropriate? Is it beneficial and does it cause no harm by having these discussions more public, say in a journal or in another space? So there's no right or wrong answer to it, but it's part of the work of understanding your positionality and how it shapes the process and what making some of these disclosures public may mean.
Thank you, Rachel and Chris, for those outstanding answers. And I know we are at our time, so I'm going to address one last question and then we will bid adieu. And so Edison asked the question, I'm Edison from Ecuador. Thank you for the webinar. I'd like to know if studying the modules will help me with access to a PhD program at the University of Colorado or elsewhere. And I just wanted to share that I can't say for certain that completing these modules would help anyone to gain access to any particular program, but I do think one of the things we've seen and learned from the students or prospective students who have completed them, that these are a credential that can go onto your resumes or your CVs. And also I know that some new graduate students who've been recently admitted to programs or are first timers in terms of conducting field research have certainly shared with Rachel, Candace, and I that completing these modules in advance of conducting field work, in advance of starting to write papers, having ready access to the bibliographies and the download that comes through completing the modules has really helped with advanced graduate studies. So Edison, thank you for joining us from Ecuador. Thanks to all of those who have jumped on to the webinar today. And thank you for completing this module if you haven't already, and for sharing it with your students and colleagues as is appropriate. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and bring this demonstration webinar to a close, ending where we began, with gratitude for each of you, and a special thanks to Bella, Molly, and Chris for all of your effort to bring this positionality module to our team here at Converge. So everybody have a really good rest of your day, and thank you for the work that you do. Please remember to take care of yourself and others. Bye.